Hi, I'm Holly Richardson, and I am here with On Point with Michelle Mumford and Wanda Amon, and we are going to talk to you today about elections in Utah. But first, we wanted to say thank you to Sutherland Institute, who is gracious enough to host this show. And just as a reminder, as a nonprofit organization, they are not endorsing candidates, but we are happy to hear diverse views. And welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. So, Michelle, you are recently retired as Dean of the BYU Law School.
Yes.
The admissions
Assistant
Dean.
Dean.
Assistant Dean.
Correct.
And
Dean
then
of
Wanda,
admissions.
you're running for Salt Lake County Clerk position. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
That's correct. So tell me about that position.
It's a wonderful position. The clerk oversees licenses and the processing of passports, the recording of the council minutes, but most importantly, the clerk oversees the elections. It's a wonderful position. It's very exciting, and it is a position that I'm very, very interested in obtaining because I oversaw polling locations and caucuses during the 2012 elections, and I became very interested in how we can run secure elections.
Oh, that's great. That's really interesting. So you're running against a 24-year incumbent, is
Correct.
that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's always a bit of an uphill battle to run against an incumbent who's been there, it seems. So tell us, what are some of the things you've been doing with your campaign? You know, do you have traction? Are you out there? Do you do town halls? I mean, what do you do when you run for a clerk position? All of that.
Everything. I haven't missed an event. My opponent has only attended 3, and I've done over 80.
Oh, wow.
To get my name out and get name recognition, I have a large sign campaign all over Salt Lake County.
I've seen many of them. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Yep.
Yes, and I am very focused. I've done Facebook, social media, through the volunteer network, getting my name out there, really hitting the ground, trying to get name recognition and get my story out there and what I can do for Salt Lake County, how I can bring better government to Salt Lake County.
That's great. So tell me, are you worried about low voter turnout? We hear a lot that it's going to be a low voter turnout year. Is that something you're concerned about?
I'm very concerned about that because it's trending right now at 30%.
Wow.
And 24 years ago, when the current, my opponent, the current clerk, took office, we were top 10 in the top 10 of the country for voter turnout.
Wow.
Over her watch, the 24 years, we are now at the bottom 10 of voter turnout. I'm very concerned about it. Our primary in June, we had less than 10% turnout in Salt Lake County.
What do you think that's attributable to?
I think the clerk's office needs to provide better customer service to the voters. For example, the primary on the 24th, she listed all the precincts in the paper on Sunday. And first off, a lot of people don't get the paper anymore. And secondly, she listed them by precinct number. And even delegates sometimes don't even know their precinct number.
Most delegates.
Right.
I've been at convention multiple times when the hardest thing to handle are people coming in not knowing their precinct
And they always have to
number.
look at their tag.
Right, or the
And
letter
so,
that was sent to them, which they don't have.
So we need to bring customer service to the clerk's office. People are so busy nowadays, only a third of people are registered in Salt Lake County to vote. We need to really focus on boosting our registration rates and bring customer service to the voters. When they register, I need to ask them as the clerk, how would you like me to communicate with you? Would you like me to email you? Would you like me, the younger kids might say, oh, Instagram me. The older people, they might say, oh, send me a letter.
Yeah.
So the clerk has to be more innovative and bring this office into the 21st century. A lot has changed since 1990. How many of us have the same job since 1990 and the same technology?
Well, right. There's so much electronically that's changed digitally, and voting, even in the voting booth, right? We've got electronic voting, and people are talking about doing online voting.
Right.
The Lieutenant Governor's office, I know, is looking at that. So
Exactly. And another thing is that we really need to focus on getting information about all the fine candidates out to the voters. We're mailing ballots out, mail-in ballots early in October, and people don't even have the information about the candidates. The clerk has to be an innovator in that area. She has to really focus on how can I get the candidates' information out. She needs to be nonpartisan. And right now there's current election guides, but you can't find a complete complete information in any one of these.
Wow, interesting.
And so the ballot right now, there's over 24 judges on the ballot. It
Yep.
is huge, and it's very hard to navigate.
Yeah.
And so the clerk really has to be innovative and get people information. She has to do a one-stop shop, all the candidates, all the issues, all the judges, all the school boards. School board is such an important area right now,
Yeah.
and a lot of people can't figure out who is running, who are their school board candidates.
Right.
They really want to make the right decision, but they don't know who the candidates are.
Right. It's hard to find information. You're right. Well, any last words for voters before they either vote this week, I guess,
Right.
today and tomorrow,
Well,
or head to the polls on Tuesday?
A couple last words. I'd like to, if they have their mail-in ballot, to please get it filled out, get it mailed in as soon as possible. Make sure they sign the back of the envelope. There's a great possibility right now, this late in the game, that if they don't sign the envelope, their votes will not count.
When do they have to have it mailed in by?
They have to have it mailed in by Monday.
By Monday. Okay, so the day
Or they can
before.
bring it to, if they don't have time to do that, they can bring it to the polls
Okay.
on Tuesday with them.
did
They
that
can either
last
they can either deposit it and their votes will go into the envelope, or they can surrender it and they can vote
Okay,
at the
that's
the
great.
precinct.
That's great to know. You can't wait till Tuesday to mail it. You have to mail it by Monday.
And the last, another important thing is we are offering same-day registration this year.
great.
So if you did Wednesday was the last day to register. If you did miss that and you would still like to participate in the voting, show up at your precinct. You have to look up your precinct online, and you just put in your address and it will tell you where your precinct is. Show up at your precincts. You can register and vote that same day.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I think there's, 3 counties maybe participating in the same day voter registration. I
Right.
think it's a great idea.
It's a great test to
Yeah.
see how that works.
Yeah.
Was that a county ballot initiative, or was
No.
that? I mean, I know
No,
the
it
legislature
was yeah.
denied that.
No, it was the legislature saying, let's look at an opt-in, voluntary opt-in by the counties who are interested in running a pilot project. So I know Salt Lake County and I think Davis County, but I'm not sure of the other counties that have opted in. But yeah, I think it's a great option, and our family experienced some trouble. We live in Utah County, but some trouble getting my son registered as a voter, and thought we'd had him registered at caucus night. Come to find out, this is the last cycle that when he went to vote during the primary and in the general, neither one was he actually registered, and they didn't count his votes. Because we thought he was registered, and they put him down as not having been registered. So same-day voter registration would have been great for him.
It sure would have.
What happened with the ballot that had the wrong information in Salt Lake County?
Basically, when Patrice went to vote, the memory card to the machine was from the previous person, and so it didn't get cleared, and so she got the wrong ballot, and so it was a glitch, that you don't like to see that happen at all, but that's what happened.
Yeah, and it happened to a state senator, so it's Patrice Arent. No, representative.
Representative.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
she
Well, I
showed
guess
up to
I was
vote
wondering,
and
is
then
it
the wrong?
was it just that one? Was it more widespread?
There's
How
no
do
way
we
to know,
know?
right?
I always tell people, that's why I got to get in there, and I've got to make sure people know what their ballot looks like before they show up. So you need to check, and you need to make sure, are these the
They can
people I'm
recognize.
voting for? It can
Right.
happen to anybody with our current machines. I'd like to phase out of them and get into a new system that would not happen in, but currently we are using the Diebold machines. So, and that is, the errors can happen where that can happen.
Yeah.
So, but I'd like to, while we're still using those machines, I'd like to have a second set of eyes check before somebody, a wrong ballot gets put out. I think
Right.
a second
Yeah.
check would avoid something like that.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
So-
Where did you get your start in politics? Why? How did you become interested?
Okay, well,
in the engagement?
I was really interested in 2008, and I've always been a Republican, registered Republican. I was really excited about President Reagan. He was the first president I voted for, and I supported him throughout that. And then as I went through my career and having children and all of those things, I was always very, as a voter, I was active in voting, but I never had time to be active in politics. So in 2008, Mitt has a very well established in business, Governor Romney. And so I started thinking, wow, we really need Governor Romney in the White House. He's going to run it like a business, and that's what my background is. And so I started praying for him, and it was a very interesting story, and I was on my way to Boston. The next morning I woke up with my family, and we were beginning to walk the Freedom Trail, and my husband says to me, Governor Romney is standing right next to you. Now, first off, I had no idea that Governor Romney was in Boston,
Wow.
and I thought, wow, this is really kind of an answer to my prayer. I don't know what but I'm very busy still raising kids. So I told myself, if he doesn't do well, succeed this time, if he runs again, I'm going to be highly involved in the campaign. So in 2011, I started calling and saying, I want to be involved in this campaign, and I started getting involved in all sorts of things. I was on all sorts of committees, and they put me in early February the GOP caucuses around the country.
Wow.
So that was really amazing to be a part of that. And then towards the end of the elections, of course, I was busy throughout the summer. I was on the finance committee, all sorts of different committees. And at the end of the summer, they said, we want to train you and put you over 15 of the most heavily attended polling sites in a swing state.
Wow.
And so they trained me for 2 days, and they sent me to Las Vegas.
Wow.
And I went down there, and I saw a lot of very interesting things down there.
Wow.
As far as elections go.
Wow.
They have voting centers, which are big areas like in malls, which have accommodations for disabled people.
Right.
So I was really excited about that because we don't really have those here.
Right.
And but a downside I saw down there is the lines were very long, and people were waiting 3 hours to get their votes in, and they were standing outside.
Oh, wow.
And it really bothered me that people would have to wait that long to get their votes in.
Yeah.
And then I saw a lot of questionable things, electioneering and things like that. So I came back and I started studying elections. And that's why I'm running for county clerk, because I am very interested in secure elections and elections that make it easy for voters to turn out and place their votes, cast their votes.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, Michelle and I have both been candidates before, and just kudos to tossing your hat in the ring. It is not easy, right?
It's hard.
It does something emotionally to you, right? And
Right.
people think that you're free game to just beat the crap out of you sometimes.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So the end is in sight. A few more days.
Thank you.
But we wish you the best of luck, and
Thank you so much. I really
hope to
appreciate
have you
it.
come back on as the new county clerk.
Thank you.
And
I'd
thank
love
you
to
for
be here.
running.
Yeah, thanks for running.
Glad to have it.
All right, so Michelle, Utah County elections, did you want to talk about that? County commissioner race?
Yeah.
Down there we have
yeah.
one, and we've
The
got school board
write-in.
races, the write-in.
Do we have yet preliminary results on how many he's received from?
No, I don't have any
Does that come
current
out at
update. It could, but no, unless they've pre-identified who their supporters are and
I
keep
see.
track that way. So, yeah. So in that race down there, you've got Greg Graves, who was the one who came through the county convention process.
Right.
But as it turned out, when he, after he became the nominee, he has had multiple bankruptcies. He did a plea in abeyance to a theft charge where he was found guilty, and he chose to plea in abeyance on that charge. And so there were a lot of people who said, including me, who said we need somebody who is better with money.
Right.
To run a $100 million budget for the county.
Right.
And so Bill
So Bill
Freeze
Freeze
has stepped up, and he's running a write-in campaign.
How has that campaign gone? I mean, I'm not down there anymore every day, and so I don't see the signs or what's
There
going
are a
on.
lot of signs, and he's done things like he's got a really active social media presence. He's been getting a lot of support, a lot of endorsements from business leaders, from mayors, people involved in city governments down there saying, look, we need somebody who has got some business acumen
Right.
to step into the seat. It's been, of course, Utah County, in Utah County politics, there are some people who just say, well, because he's the nominee that came through the process, we're going to back him no matter what. My response is, when you have more information, I think you need to make new choices.
Well, and I followed that. The Utah County, they had the Republican Party had a central committee about these issues, and I honestly couldn't figure out. You have the labeling, and you have the far right people, and then you have the more moderate people, even within the party.
Right.
I couldn't figure out who was following who. They all seem to be
Yeah,
kind
and
of going
I think
through this internal process of deciding whether they should, support Graves because he's a candidate or should go out.
Yeah, what's really interesting is people are saying, well, if you don't support the nominee, then you don't support the caucus system, and I think that's just a silly statement. I don't think there's any truth to that at all.
No, yeah. I think the trouble came in when you're an elected, like a precinct officer.
Yeah, but even
bylaws.
then, I mean, no, the bylaws are pretty, like, as long as you're not using your title, then you're fine, right? And it's always been that way. The only person who can't really weigh in is the chair and the vice chair. But besides that, everybody else, even with the bylaws in place, are saying as long as you're not using your title, your party title, whether you're precinct chair or even ledge district chair, you can go ahead and do what you want to do. Yes, some people want to push back and say this is a bad thing, but I think they're missing the point, and the point is we want good people in office who are responsible, who know how to handle money.
Right. How do you think it's going to turn out?
I'm not sure. It's really hard to do a write-in campaign. It's hard to do it successfully because you've got to get the information to the people who show up at the polls.
I can't imagine.
And that part's hard, right?
Why do you think the Democrat isn't getting more traction
Because
with all this going on?
Democrat.
Oh, that's right. That was the whole
There
issue.
is no Democrat.
That's right.
Yeah. So he is unopposed on the ballot.
opportunity
That's right. A lost
for that
opportunity. And what's interesting, so I am Republican, of course, but the Democrats have missed a lot of votes this year. So there's no Democrat running against Kevin Stratton.
Right.
There's no Democrat running against Greg Graves. There was nobody who filed to run for county commission.
Right.
And some of the people who file, and I understand this, but some of the people who file are just like, yeah, sure, whatever, put my name on the ballot. If the Democratic Party ever got their act together and started running some decent candidates, they might actually start to pick up some seats if they were able to be smart about their messaging and some of the stuff they do. But the problem I think that we face sometimes as Republicans is we sometimes oversell or we maybe are overconfident that we're always going to be able to get the votes.
Well, and as a Republican, I don't want to see an unopposed race. I want a competitor. I want the dialogue out there. I want the conversation going. I want the ideas going back and forth, and I want to be, to have something for the voters to choose from.
Yeah.
And in my district, Brian King is running unopposed. He's my Democrat legislator, and
and no Republican ran.
No Republican ran.
Yeah.
I guess I should feel
you should have
responsible about that because it's my district. But
and that's one of the issues, right? An unopposed race, if you're the candidate, is great, right? If you're the candidate, being unopposed is great.
Right.
If you're not the candidate, I'm with you. I'd like to see some more dialogue. I'm not afraid of primary races. I'm not afraid of strong general races, right? It's kind of like the World Series. I'm a Royals fan. I know one of the pitchers. He lives in my neighborhood when he's not pitching for the Royals, and I wanted them to win. Last night, they finished their World Series, and the Giants won.
I'm a Giants fan.
But one of the things that's really great is that it actually went 7 games.
Right.
That's an exciting game.
And it's
a lot more exciting to see that than it is to see a total sweep and it's a total blowout. And, it makes it fun.
And I think actually, on that vein, I think turning to CD4, that was kind of, so yesterday I got in a little, not a kerfuffle, but
that's a great word, by the way.
Thank you. I love kerfuffle. I got a lot of
pushback.
Thank you. Pushback from people that I respect and admire, and who usually we can talk well about, because I suggested perhaps the poll in CD4 that recently came out 2 days ago. Very, very respectable, reputable organization at BYU that does surveys, does polling. Released a poll that was questionable, and national and local pollsters are questioning the methodology in this poll. There were only 200 and some participants.
In the fourth,
they weren't all in the district. It's this nationwide. It was a self-selecting kind of a survey, and that so the methodology was very questionable to release. And so I questioned on Twitter, it was just kind of an open question, kind of a conversation starter, why would they release such a thing? Perhaps they want to skew results, towards Owens, against Mia Love. lot of pushback on that. I agree that's not what they were doing, but I still think perhaps they were wanting, I mean, these are political science professors. They want competitive races in Utah.
I'll push back a little bit on
Okay.
you too, because they are a reputable polling organization.
are.
So I don't question their
have n-
methodology actually, because they've done it. They've been able, I think, to keep up with the times and do electronic polling. Where they actually do have legitimate randomized samples.
And
So
the results are probably the best in the state.
their results are really
I
good.
realize
So
that.
yes, it's a small sample size and there's a large margin of error. And I understand that, and they're not saying, look, this race is not over, and I get that. It's not just pollsters who are interested in competitive races. It's
Right.
newspapers. It's,
Right.
it's news organizations. If it's a closer race,
Well,
I
and
mean,
that's what the
it sells
headlines.
stories,
The
right?
headlines come out from that poll. Owens ahead of Love. Like, really?
Right.
But the headline will then trigger. It'll snowball into different. I got this Utah policy poll. Decide, is Mia Love going to win by over 10? Is she going to be? And before I would have gone, oh well, she's going to. But this poll had me
Right.
thinking,
Well,
maybe it'll
maybe
be
it's a
5
little
to
tough-
10,
closer.
right?
Yeah.
And so the poll
Yeah.
itself will change future polls
Sure.
and perhaps affect
Sure.
the election itself.
Sure. And again, polls are just a snapshot of that group of people that day, that time.
It's the headline that comes out of it.
So, yeah, I mean, headlines come out of it. Money sometimes comes out of it. It can
Right.
be used as a driver for fundraising. I mean, I hope that Mia Love's campaign is using it as a fundraiser to say, guys, this race is not over. We need you to go to the polls, and
Right.
we need you to donate to make sure we get our message out the last few days. And I think I think that actually can drive things both directions, right? It gives Owens people some hope that maybe they could pull it off, but it gives Love's people, I think, some impetus to say, wow, maybe it's not the blowout that we thought it might be, and I better actually get to the polls. And that ties into that voter apathy
No, you're
stuff.
right. That's a positive message. We want campaigns to always be out there knocking doors and thinking that it's going to be.
But we want the
an easy
voters
bag.
too, right, from the campaigns. And that was one of the things I think in the 2012 cycle for Mia against Jim Matheson is they had polls that showed her far ahead.
Right.
And they had, she lost by, 767, 87 votes, something like that, less than 800 votes.
Yeah.
And you had people who said, but I thought she had it by 10 points. You didn't
So I
need
didn't
my vote.
go. Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, you didn't need my vote. And of course, she did need their vote, and that's the thing. So there's a county commission race, for example, up in Uintah County. The current county commissioner, Mike McKee, won by 3 votes. 1, 2, 3. 3 votes, the primary. And his primary opponent is running a write-in campaign against him for the general, right? It's every single vote really does matter. And even when you think it's a really big race, it still matters, right? And so it's still important, I think, that people get out and vote. So we're going to maybe wrap up with one final topic. What do you want to cover? 5 days before Election Day.
Other than elections,
No,
Attorney
elections.
General survey.
No. Let's do elections, but
'Kay.
let's talk about, I think there's a couple of races where I think the seats are going to switch hands, or switch parties.
That's right.
In the State House. So I think the district, I think it's House District 30, where Larry Wiley is the incumbent and Sophia DeCaro is running against him. I think that Sophia will win, and I think that seat will flip to Republican hands.
And she has a great business background.
Yeah,
and-
so she was the
approachable
assistant
and-
director of GOED, the Governor's Office of Economic Development.
Right.
She held fundraisers with Governor Herbert and Spence Eccles and really big names in business and government in the state
Right.
of Utah. I mean,
Right.
she's not a lightweight, and she's coming in. Larry barely won last time. He's a really great guy. He's very nice. But I think Sophia is going to come out on top on this race, and I think it's probably not going to be that close. She's a very hard worker. She knows her stuff. She's been immersed in financial data and business stuff for years, and I think she's really going to be fantastic. The other race that I think might go the other direction is the one that's currently held by Jerry Anderson
Oh.
from Price. He lives in
Right.
Price, and I think it might flip back to Brad King, who lives down there. So he was in the House before. He was there, I think, 12 years. He served in minority leadership. He stepped down to run for the Senate seat, and that was the year it flipped I think Christine Watkins took that seat, and then last cycle, it went Republican, and I think he may be able to take it back.
I see.
So the
So
Republican,
it would be net zero.
a net
These
zero with
switches.
those two. But
Right.
there's, I think, opportunities for a couple of other Republican pickups. Fred Cox may be
Fred
able,
Cox is doing great.
He is
And
really
he was
doing
there
great.
before.
He was there before, and he's running against a Democrat whose name is Mike Lee, which I find really, that's like really funny, right? Because
is funny. I can't not laugh.
I saw in the paper recently that Mike Lee, the Democrat, said he thinks some Republicans probably will vote for him because they think he's the other Mike Lee, and they're not sure on the ballot why he's running against a Fred Cox, but okay. But he also will lose some Democrats who say, I'm not voting for Mike Lee.
Right, right.
So that race may switch hands.
But Fred is I've really always enjoyed how he
Yeah.
legislates. He does a lot of research. He does
research.
a lot of summary work, and he's very open to constituents.
Yeah, he is. And one of the things, too, that I love about him is he doesn't ever let himself get pigeonholed.
Right.
Right? And he's like, look, on some things I'm this way, on some things I'm this way. He's very pragmatic.
Right.
He is very open. He talks to a lot of people. And he's working hard, and that race, that House seat could flip. Right now it's with Janice Fisher, who's a Democrat, but she didn't run again. So yeah, I mean, I think overall, I think we'll probably see a net pickup, believe it or not, a net pickup for Republicans. It's like, like we're already at a major supermajority. How do you even add more? But I think that might happen. But I do think that the Democrats will flip that seat in Price. And one of the reasons is not only does Brad King live down there and is well known and well liked, but the bulk of the district is located in Price, but
Right.
it does include a little bit of Duchesne, and that's where the Republican nominee actually lives, is Duchesne.
Oh,
So
so they're not- he's not
geographically,
close.
they're quite spread out, and
Right.
so yeah, Brad is right there in the heart of Carbon County, which is the
course.
bulk of the district.
Right.
So anyway, what do you think? Do you have any projections or predictions for
I'm
Tuesday
excited
night?
to see it. I have voted.
I have too, actually,
I
last
think-
week. Yeah.
Will you be at the party Tuesday
I
night?
will. I'll be
Good.
at the party.
Good. Everyone's invited.
Yeah.
I'm
I
just
can't
gonna
remember where it
leave
is.
it an innocuous the party.
Is it?
I should
the
know. I think
Hilton?
it's at the Hilton. Yes.
Starting at 8
starts
o'clock.
at 8.
Yeah. Which means it doesn't really start till 9.
9. Yes.
And it goes late.
So put the kids to bed and
Yeah.
then come out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Any other predictions from a pretty quiet year, actually?
it has been a quiet year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ray's is very comfortable. All of the other congressional districts are very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mia Love will win.
I agree. Hers will probably be closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. On the ballot, we have a lot of judges. We've got constitutional amendments.
we do.
Any input on those or places where people can go to find information?
Well, for the judges, you can go to judges.utah.gov. I don't know if that's
There-
correct. Utah.judges.gov.
So there is a
Google.
website
Yeah.
that provides some review. Yeah.
Yep, it's good. People have asked me my opinion, and I'm giving them. Most of the judges.utah.gov are, recommends that all of them be retained. It's just hard. It's hard unless you've been in front of them,
I know.
or you're, and that's what ends up happening is somebody who has a bone to pick or
Yeah.
something like that.
Well, and it's an interesting system too to have judges appointed and then retained by election. I mean, that makes it's a little bit different because they don't campaign.
Right.
Right? You're voting to retain them. In some states, they actually have to campaign every cycle.
Right.
Or every 4
Which
years, whatever
I
their
also
cycle
think
is.
is problematic.
I think that's a little bit problematic as well. For other
The
reasons.
school board races are interesting.
School board races, Len, let's finish on that. So school board races, we've got state school board races that have heated up. We also have local school board races
Yeah.
and people who have sued to be put back on the ballot.
Right.
There were 3 who were put back on the ballot, 1 dropped off again and said, never mind.
And the legislature now just coming out, that interesting President Niederhauser's quote that, that there will not be a nonpartisan.
A nonpartisan option.
Right.
Yeah, so I suspect we're going to be going to partisan races for school board.
Or some kind of hybrid.
Yeah, but who knows?
I don't know what that means, yeah.
Who knows, right? So in some races, there are going to be 3 people on the ballot, and some there's 2 for state school board. But I think because of Common Core, the discussion on Common Core this year, it is like the first year in memory that that I
people
can
are
ever
paying
remember
attention.
that people care.
Yeah. Yeah.
About
and they're
this,
paying attention.
and they're paying attention, and I mean that globally, not specifically, because
Right.
there have always been people who have cared about those races.
Right.
But from a broad perspective, they're pretty far down the ballot, and people are like, what, who? I don't
Right.
I don't even know.
I had to look up
Yeah.
who my state rep was. I have never heard from her once, and I didn't
Your
know who
school
she
board
was.
person?
My school board.
Yeah.
My school board.
Yeah, and it's hard for them. So they spend significantly less money than, for example, a state Senate race,
Right.
and yet their districts are almost double the size of a state Senate district,
Right.
population-wise. So there's some conversations that are going to happen about how people make decisions for
Why is
education in
this?
Utah.
So there was this issue about a school employee, an
Yeah.
elementary principal sent an email, obviously partisan email. Lieutenant Governor asked him to apologize. Why is the Alpine School District race so contentious?
It's that same reason. So it's establishment versus non-establishment. It's Common Core versus anti-Common Core. And the person that he sent a letter in favor of is establishment. She's been there for a long time. And the person running against her is anti. And so, there's...
Do you have opinions on who will win that one?
I really don't.
Or overall establishment versus anti?
I think the anti-Common Core, anti-establishment are going to do better, but I don't think I don't think it'll be like a clean sweep. But I mean, they've got traction.
Right.
There's no question they've got traction, and even the polling stuff that I've seen quite a bit of is there's a very anti-Common Core sentiment, even though most people don't understand it, and they're willing to admit that they don't really know what it means.
And will the new superintendent be able to bring everybody together?
I'm doubtful. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
To
I
be
mean,
discussed later.
Yeah, and I don't know him personally. All I know is his reputation up in Davis County has not been good.
Shook
It's mixed.
things up.
He shook things up a
Which
lot.
I'm not afraid of.
Yeah, to some degree,
Depends on
right? If
why
you lose
and
a third
how.
of your teachers, that's concerning to
Right.
me. The Davis County, the report cards, quote report cards, or information on the SAGE testing came out. They did not do well. They're one of the lowest in the state, and that's where he's coming from. So I don't know, right?
And may I just say that that districts, most of us really, because this is where the scores lie, happy that our students are in the 60s is sad
well, no, I
to
know.
me.
Well, but see, remember, this is a baseline.
I know, we can't compare,
This is
I
a
know.
baseline. It's totally different than the previous testing.
But
so,
what 60 said is 60% of proficiency. Like, that's not, not comparing to where they were before, regardless of comparing to where they were before.
but we've known there's a problem for a long time.
Let's get the proficiency up.
So I mean, that's one of the issues, right, that I'm afraid that gets lost in some of this conversation about
Yes.
standards.
Yes.
Yeah, is we're already struggling in Utah.
Right.
Right. 80% of our high school grads from our high schools have to take remedial math or English or both.
Right.
80%. That means
Right.
only 20% of our high school grads, and we still have a high dropout rate. Only 20% of our grads are actually proficient enough to take college freshman English or math without remedial work. I mean, it's a concern, right? And we're doing, I mean, the state, there's some really great things,
I think that the larger focus will help.
Yeah,
bigger-
and I hope it does, and I hope what does not happen is that we see a real distinct polarization actually on those boards, where it's always, a split vote where they never come together, right? And it's strictly partisan, even though it's not actually partisan, that it's that both factions on these boards will never come together.
Right.
That's my fear, and I
Definitely.
hope that they're willing to collaborate and work together. So, anyway, elections have consequences, and
they do.
not voting has consequences.
Yes, it does.
So this is our plea for people to get out and vote and get our participation rate up above 30%. That would be awesome. And we'll see you next time on Point.